The string lights shimmered against the vineyard's glass pavilion, wrapping everything in golden warmth that felt borrowed, not earned. I stood near the far end of the table. My name tag read Nora, Founder Lady. Cute, I thought. Ethan's card sat up front beside our parents', bold font, centered like a crown jewel. The air smelled like wine and lilacs. Waiters in black ties floated between tables, topping glasses I hadn't touched. The laughter near the head table rolled like a wave that never reached me. My mother's diamond earrings caught the light as she leaned toward Ethan, whispering, proud and performative. Then the slideshow started. The Ellison family through the years. Childhood birthdays. Christmas mornings, high school graduations. Ethan's smile again and again, his arm around a new car, a trophy, a dog I'd begged for and never got. Out of 40 photos, I counted 2 of me, one at age 10, one at 23, face half-cropped. I felt the room shrink, the sound dull into a hum. Ethan rose with his glass raised. To the family that made me who I am. Applause burst around the table. My mother dabbed her eyes. My father clapped so hard his ring hit the glass. I smiled because I know how to. Inside, my pulse pounded steady and slow. They made you who you are? I made myself who I am. My phone buzzed under the tablecloth. Avery. Remember, calm is power. Me. Always. Then my father stood, steadying himself on Ethan's shoulder. We're so proud of Ethan. He's got a new startup, and Nora will be helping him with funding soon. A few guests turned toward me, polite smiles, expectant. They didn't know I hadn't been told. Didn't know I'd written checks before that went unacknowledged. Debts disguised as love. Clapping again. Louder this time. I exhaled through my nose, long and controlled, the way you do when you've learned that silence is stronger than any speech. My mother caught my eye. She smiled like I should be grateful for the mention. I lifted my glass. The champagne tasted flat. Outside, wind rippled through the vines, silver under the lights. I stared at the reflections on the glass wall, my face among theirs, but not of theirs. I stopped being afraid a long time ago, I whispered. No one heard me, but it didn't matter. The decision was already forming, clear as the stem of the glass in my hand. The smell of pine and cinnamon still takes me back to those Christmas mornings in Sonoma, the ones that looked perfect from the outside. Every year I'd wake early, heart thudding with hope, and every year it ended the same, Ethan tearing open the wrapping on something big, a brand new bike, a drum set, a VR console, while I unwrapped something thoughtful. 1 year, a used sketch pad, pages curled and faintly stained. My name written on a tag that said, "You're so creative, sweetheart." I thanked them anyway. I always did. I thought being grateful would make me seen. By 16, I understood that everything in our house was gravity, and Ethan was the center. He got the money, the attention, the soft voice when he messed up. I got, "You're the responsible one, Nora. You'll understand someday." When I was accepted to MIT, I waited all evening for them to come home so I could tell them in person. They walked in at 9, exhausted from helping Ethan with his new business plan. Mom smiled, said, "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. But you'll manage, right? Ethan needs us more right now." I laughed then, small, brittle. That night, I wrote the acceptance deposit check myself. A month before graduation, I found out why my savings account balance didn't match what I'd tracked. They'd withdrawn $12,000, my entire college fund, to help Ethan start his first business. My mother said it like it was a family investment. "Something noble. He's your brother," she told me. "When he wins, we all win." When I graduated, they didn't show. No call, no message. Just a voicemail from Mom the next day. "We're so proud, sweetheart. We'll celebrate soon, but you know your brother's been dealing with a lot." I remember sitting alone on the bleachers, watching other families swarm their children with flowers and photos. My hand stayed empty, and I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need anyone to clap for me to make my life count. But the truth is, I kept glancing at the parking lot until it emptied. Ethan liked to remind me how invisible I was. "You're too intense, Nora," he'd say. "Nobody likes a woman who outshines everyone. He'd grin like it was advice. He always wanted to dull me down. At 23, I came home for what would be the last time. The kitchen smelled of burnt coffee and debt. Mom was pacing. Dad sat with a bank envelope on the table. "Sweetheart, it's just a misunderstanding," he said. But it wasn't. Ethan's latest company had failed, again, and my parents had co-signed his loan under my name. $48,000 owed, my credit ruined. I stood there, dizzy with the betrayal. "You forged my name?" "We were going to tell you," Mom said. "You'd have said no, and we couldn't let your brother's dream die." Something in me fractured then. The quiet girl who always said it's fine didn't speak. She just walked upstairs, pulled out a suitcase, and began to fold her life into it. Mom followed, crying. "Don't do this. Family sticks together." I zipped the suitcase shut. Then maybe I'm not family. That night, I drove away without looking back. The road curved between vineyards, moonlight cutting across the windshield like lines I couldn't uncross. I didn't know where I was going, only that anywhere would be better than home, 18 years later. Sometimes I wonder if leaving was the first act of creation. I coded in shared apartments where the paint peeled off the walls and the Wi-Fi cut out every few hours. I ate instant ramen and built prototypes between temp jobs. 47 rejections for my first pitch deck. 47 ways to hear Nora Avery appeared after the 48th. She looked at my messy whiteboard and said, "We'll build it from the ashes, like data phoenixes." And somehow, that was enough. One night, I hit send on a new version of the pitch. 2 weeks later, Veritas Link was real. The headline read, "Veritas Link raises $12 million in Series A funding." I signed the deal in a thrift store blazer and cried quietly in the bathroom after. By 35, I had my first real home. A quiet glass house on a Palo Alto hill. Floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of silence that didn't feel lonely. I took one photo at sunset. The city lights stretching below, and posted it with a single line, self-made. No footnotes. By the time Veritas Link hit a $70 million valuation, I'd grown used to the hum of glass offices, the quiet rhythm of servers behind the walls, and the kind of silence that only comes when people finally respect your name. We had 120 employees spread across 3 floors in Palo Alto. Engineers, analysts, dreamers, and every one of them had fought beside me. TechCrunch had just published a feature titled, "The Reluctant Visionary, How Nora Ellison Turned Rejection into a Data Revolution." My assistant pinned it to the office bulletin board beside our first crude logo, 2 lines crossing like a scar. I drove to work in a Tesla Model S Plaid, white interior, not a single personal sticker. I'd learned early that power didn't need to announce itself. My jewelry was minimal. A thin gold ring, a watch that once belonged to Avery's grandmother. My wardrobe was precise, crisp white suits that made people look twice before interrupting. Avery planned the company's 5th anniversary party that spring. The building was strung with fairy lights and branded banners. 5 years of truth. I walked in late on purpose. I liked watching them celebrate before I said a word. Laughter filled the courtyard. Someone had brought in a jazz trio, and the smell of champagne drifted between conversations about code and contracts. Avery found me at the edge of the crowd, 2 glasses in hand. "Look at this," she said. "You built a family out of strangers." I smiled. The best kind of family. When the toast came, it wasn't mine, it was theirs. They chanted, "To Nora," over and over, glasses raised, eyes bright. For a moment, the old ache, the one that whispered, "You'll never be enough," quieted completely. Later that night, I stood on the balcony of my office, city lights flickering below, thinking about the long road between being invisible and being seen. Success didn't heal you. It just gave you better lighting to see your scars. My phone buzzed. A notification. Facebook. Your mom tagged you in a post. I hesitated before opening it. The photo was an old one. Me at 16, standing behind Ethan as he held up a trophy. Caption. "So proud of our daughter Nora, and our brilliant son Ethan who inspired her to succeed." My throat tightened, not with sadness, but recognition. They never missed a chance to take credit for what they ignored, I thought. I set the phone face down and turned back to the city. The party music drifted through the open doors, and I let myself breathe it in. Proof that I'd built something no one could erase. 2 weeks later, my phone rang again. "Sweetheart," my mother began, her voice honey-thick. "Ethan's going through a tough time. You wouldn't believe how banks treat honest entrepreneurs." I pressed the phone between my shoulder and ear, glancing over the spreadsheet on my desk. "How much?" I asked, flat. "It's not about money, dear," she said quickly. "It's about family. But since you ask, about $450,000 would really set him right. You know how he's struggled since the pandemic. You've been so blessed. This could be your way of giving back." I let the silence stretch long enough for her to squirm. Then, "Send me the paperwork," I said evenly. She sounded surprised, almost relieved. "Oh, wonderful, and we'd love for you to come home. Just like old times. Old times." The words landed like ash in my mouth. "Sure," I said finally. "Once." When I hung up, I caught my reflection in the glass. Calm, unreadable. Avery's words came back to me. "You built a family out of strangers." Now, it seemed, the family I was born into wanted to test what I'd become. The Sonoma vineyard hadn't changed. Not really. Same long gravel driveway lined with oak trees. Same weathered farmhouse. Same hand-painted sign that once made me proud to call this place home. But as the Tesla's tires crunched over the stones, I realized what had changed. Me. The sky was bruised gray, and a slow drizzle had turned the hills to watercolor. I stepped out, heels crunching gravel, the tailored weight of a $3,000 charcoal gray suit hugging my shoulders. No jewelry, no softness, just the kind of precision that made people uncomfortable without knowing why. The front door creaked open before I reached the porch. My father stood there. Dennis Ellison, once the proud owner of this land, now smaller somehow, sunken into the years. "You look," he said, eyes flicking over the car, the suit, the watch he'd once mocked as silly city nonsense. "You look successful." I gave him the faintest smile. "I've been working." Inside, the house smelled the same. Oak barrels, dust, and the faint sweetness of old wine. But there was something else in the air now. Tension. The kind that sticks to your ribs. Margaret, my mother, appeared from the kitchen with a tray of scones that looked painfully performative. "I made your favorite," she said too brightly. I didn't answer. Avery had warned me, "Don't give them small talk. They'll weaponize it." We gathered around the long dining table, the same one where I once begged for a computer and got a lecture about entitlement. Ethan sat across from me. He'd gained weight, lost confidence, and carried the smug heaviness of a man who still believed the world owed him something. After some hollow pleasantries, Dad asking about the tech stuff, Mom marveling at how far you've come, Ethan leaned back in his chair and cleared his throat. "So," he said, tapping the table with one hand, "we've all agreed it's just a temporary loan. You can spare $500,000, right? I mean, come on. You owe Mom and Dad for everything they gave up." The room went quiet. Even the air seemed to pull taut, waiting. I didn't blink. I let the silence hang long enough for the ticking clock on the mantel to grow loud. Then I reached for my briefcase. "Let me show you something." I placed it on the table and flipped it open. The metal clasps clicked like a gavel striking wood. Inside were folders, neatly labeled, color-coded, precise. I began to pull out the contents, one by one, placing them in front of my parents like evidence at trial. First, a bank transfer record. $12,000 from my college fund, I said evenly, wired to Ethan's account. I was 19. Ethan frowned. That was for my business. I didn't let him finish. Next, a loan document with both my parents' signatures. "You used my name to co-sign a vineyard expansion loan in 2008. You defaulted. My credit was ruined for 6 years. Mom's hand trembled. We didn't think you'd find out." I did. Then came the printed voicemail transcripts. I slid them forward like playing cards. Here's one from August 2005. You said, and I quote, You'll understand when you have a son like Ethan." Her face went pale. My father's jaw clenched. "And this," I said, pulling out a spreadsheet, "is every check I've written to you since 2005. Mortgage payments, medical bills, Ethan's investments, totaling $318,400. The rain outside started to patter harder against the window, filling the silence they couldn't. "You talk about debt," I said softly. "Here are the numbers. For the first time in my life, none of them had a comeback." Ethan's face flushed red. "So what, you kept receipts? You think money makes you better than us?" I met his eyes. "No, I think accountability does." Mom's lip quivered. "Nora, please, this opportunity has passed," I interrupted. They looked confused, until I reached for the final document, a single sheet of paper, embossed with my company's logo. Veritas Link Foundation pledges $500,000 in scholarships for women in tech, in honor of Avery Chen. I placed it in the center of the table. Ethan stared at it, unblinking. "You're kidding me. You'd give it to strangers instead of family?" I closed the briefcase with a snap. "Blood makes you related," I said, rising from my seat. "Love makes you family." The silence cracked open. Mom started to sob. "After everything we did for you." "What you did to me," I corrected. Dad slammed his palm on the table. "You ungrateful!" A crash cut him off, Ethan's chair scraping back violently. He lunged across the table and grabbed my wrist. His grip was tighter than I remembered, the kind that once left bruises. But this time I didn't flinch. "Let go," I said calmly. He didn't. Then, before he could speak, a voice came from the doorway. "Ma'am?" Two security guards, discreet, professional, stepped forward. Avery had insisted on them just in case. I'd laughed then. I wasn't laughing now. Ethan froze as one of them took his arm. "You brought security?" he hissed. "I brought boundaries," I said. The guards eased him back. Not forceful, just firm. Enough to remind everyone in that room that I wasn't the girl who begged for fairness anymore. Mom's cries filled the room again. Dad stared down at the table, shaking his head. "You'll regret this," he muttered. "Maybe," I said, stepping toward the door. "But not tonight." Outside, the sky had opened up completely. Rain fell in sheets, drumming against the Tesla's hood. I paused on the porch, watching the water pool around the roots of the vineyard. The same roots they'd once said I'd abandoned. Avery's voice echoed in my memory. "You built a family out of strangers." I smiled, rain catching on my lashes. Behind me, the shouting started again, muffled, panicked, irrelevant. I got into the car, closed the door, and the noise vanished. The cabin filled with silence, pure, earned, expensive silence. As the Tesla eased down the drive, I caught one last glimpse of the house in the rearview mirror. Small, flickering, collapsing into its own shadows. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was leaving home. I felt like I was finally driving toward it. The next morning, Nora's phone lit up like a siren, vibrating endlessly on the nightstand beside her untouched coffee. 7 missed calls. 58 unread texts, Ethan, Mom, Dad, unknown numbers, a few from local reporters. She didn't answer a single one. Instead, she stood by her floor-to-ceiling window, the city sprawling beneath her, glass towers reflecting the pale gold of morning. The rain from last night had rinsed everything clean, but inside the air still felt charged. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she looked Ethan Ellison, Facebook post. "Money changes people." My sister's forgotten her roots. Family used to mean something before success poisoned it. It had 400 comments already, sympathy pouring in, people tagging her, adding crying emojis, typing things like, "So sad when success divides families." Nora just exhaled, calm and slow. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. By noon, everything changed. A freelance journalist, probably one of Avery's quiet allies, posted screenshots of Ethan's failed LLC filings, bankruptcy records, and loan defaults. The narrative flipped overnight, Tweets now read, "She didn't abandon her family, she escaped them." Turns out her brother's been bankrupt 5 times. Imagine using your sister's credit to fund your failure. The Veritas Link Foundation press release hit the same day. Photos of Nora and Avery standing before a backdrop that read, "Empower her future," spread across tech media. TechCrunch, CEO turns family debt into $500K Women in Tech grant. Business Insider, powerful, poetic justice. Avery texted her that night. "They can't rewrite your story anymore." Nora typed back, "They never wrote it. I just stopped letting them edit." 2 days later, she sat across from Dr. Kapoor, her therapist, a calm woman with eyes that always looked like they saw through fog. The office smelled faintly of sandalwood and old books. Dr. Kapoor studied her quietly before saying, "You seem calm." Nora nodded. "I'm not angry anymore. I thought I would be." "Why do you think that is?" She thought for a moment, tracing the edge of her coffee cup. "Because for the first time I didn't explain myself. I didn't justify, didn't argue, I just left it there." Dr. Kapoor smiled softly. "That's not indifference, Nora, that's peace." Nora's voice was steady. "They'll never understand. You're not healing them," Dr. Kapoor said. "You're healing the part of you that believed you had to." Something in that sentence landed like truth finally finding its mark. Nora blinked hard, then laughed quietly. A sound that surprised even her. She breathed deeply. "I used to think success would make them proud. And now? Now I know it was never about pride. It was control." Dr. Kapoor leaned forward slightly. "And what do you want instead?" Nora looked out the window. Freedom. Later that week, Avery came over with Thai takeout and a bottle of sake. They sat barefoot in Nora's living room, music playing low, the city lights shimmering below. Avery raised her glass. "To boundaries." Nora clinked hers against it. "To chosen family," Avery grinned. "So, how does it feel being the internet's latest hero?" "Loud," Nora said, "but honest." She showed Avery the message she'd just received from her lawyer. "To the Ellison family. All future contact must be directed through counsel." Avery whistled. "That's clean. That's final." "It's necessary," Nora replied. For a moment, they sat in silence, the only sound the faint hum of the city outside. Then Avery smiled again, softer this time. "You know, there's something poetic about all this. You spent half your life proving you deserved a seat at their table. Now you're building your own." Nora smiled faintly. "And it's invitation only." Days later, the public reaction reached its peak. Business Insider's article was everywhere. CEO redirects family debt into women's empowerment grant. The comments section overflowed with admiration. Powerful. Poetic justice. She didn't burn bridges. She built her own island. Imagine turning betrayal into a movement. The foundation's inbox flooded with letters. Young women writing from colleges, from shelters, from nowhere towns, thanking her for showing them it was possible to start over without permission. Meanwhile, Ethan's company, whatever was left of it, dissolved quietly. The website went down. The social accounts vanished. A local paper ran a short notice 2 weeks later. The Ellison vineyard has been sold to private buyers. The family has relocated. Nora read the line twice, then folded the paper and slipped it into her desk drawer. Not as a trophy, just closure. That evening, she walked barefoot across her balcony, the night air cool against her skin. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from the foundation's account. A new message from a young woman named Leela, the first scholarship recipient. "I used to think I had to make my parents proud. Now I just want to make myself proud. Thank you." Nora smiled, tears glinting under the city lights. She typed back, "That's the real inheritance." For the first time in years, she felt it. Not triumph, not revenge. Just stillness. The world outside kept spinning, louder, messier, demanding. But inside, Nora Ellison sat in the quiet glow of everything she'd built. She no longer needed to prove she was self-made. Now, she simply was. A year later, the air inside the Veritas Link Foundation Hall buzzed with quiet anticipation. Rows of folding chairs filled with students, mentors, journalists, and donors shimmered beneath soft amber lights. On the stage, the banner read, "Empower Her Future, Annual Scholarship Ceremony." Nora stepped up to the podium, dressed in a sleek navy jumpsuit that caught the light just enough to command respect without asking for it. The audience fell silent. Her eyes landed on a nervous young woman in the front row. Maya, 19, the first in her family to go to college. Her hands twisted in her lap, clutching the corners of a crumpled acceptance letter. Nora smiled. "You don't have to be fearless," she said into the microphone. "You just have to move forward anyway." Maya looked up, eyes wide. "This," Nora continued, holding up the oversized check, "is for every girl who was told she was too much, too loud, too ambitious, too sure of herself." Applause rose like a tide. Maya climbed the steps, trembling, and when she took the check, $50,000, printed in clean black ink, her voice cracked. "Thank you for believing girls like me deserve a chance." "I didn't do it for belief," Nora said softly, so only she could hear. "I did it because we always did." Flashbulbs went off. Cameras captured the moment. Nora Ellison, once the forgotten daughter, now the woman who rewrote her legacy through generosity instead of guilt. After the ceremony, she mingled, smiled, answered questions. Reporters asked about the foundation's next steps. Students thanked her between tears and laughter. By the time the crowd thinned, the night air outside smelled faintly of eucalyptus and rain. Avery appeared beside her, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "To the girl who stopped explaining," Avery said. "To the girl who started living," Nora replied. They clinked glasses, the sound sharp and satisfying. Later, alone in her office, she noticed a single unread email from Margaret Ellison. Subject, "I'm proud of you." Body, that's all. Nora stared at the screen. Her chest didn't tighten this time. There was no rush of hope, no ache for validation, just stillness. She closed the email quietly, like shutting the final page of a long, unfinished book. No reply, no bitterness, just peace. That evening, she sat on her porch overlooking the hills, the city stretched below in molten gold. The first drops of rain tapped gently against the wooden railing. Avery sat beside her, legs curled under a blanket, eyes half closed with contentment. Nora swirled her glass of wine. "You know," she said, voice low, "for most of my life I thought worth was about what we give them. Our time, our love, our silence." Avery turned to her. "And now? Now I know it's measured by what we refuse to lose again." A long pause. The rain grew steadier, the sound soft against the roof. Avery reached over, touching her hand. "You didn't lose anything tonight. You just planted something better." Nora smiled faintly. "Exactly." She stood, setting the glass aside, and walked down the steps of the porch. A small hole waited in the soil, the one she'd dug earlier. In her hands she carried a young olive tree, its roots wrapped in burlap, its leaves silver-green against the storm-dark sky. She crouched, pressed her palms into the damp earth, and planted it gently. The camera, if there were one, would linger, rain falling softly on her hair, the city lights flickering behind her, the tree swaying with the wind. Olive trees lived for centuries, she'd read once. They thrived in rocky soil, growing slow but steady, their roots impossible to tear out once deep enough. That was her now, not revenge, not victory, just roots, strong, quiet, patient. As thunder rolled in the distance, Nora stood back and looked at what she'd planted. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "This time it grows on my terms." Fade out, rain glimmering in the porch light, the olive tree standing small but certain in the earth.